Is it a large group?
We're starting now.
Great.
Your camera just moved.
It did.
Oh, it moves based on sound.
Well,
you were talking.
We're going to see how this goes.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody. This is Tracy from the Cayuga County Chamber of Commerce. We're working through some technical learning right now with the different technology going on. But we're happy to be here today to present for the first time the state of the schools. So this year we've been moving a lot of our programming online, and that has opened up the opportunity to add new programming. In the past, it's been hard to fit a school report into our State of the City and County event, but we have so much flexibility now that we can make sure to bring you the most up-to-date information and expand what we're covering. So today we have Dr. Brian Hartwell from the Cayuga-Onondaga BOCES and Jeff Pirozollo, Superintendent of Auburn City School District, here to talk about what's happening with schools. I am going to start with a disclaimer that I'm sure you will hear multiple times throughout this presentation. This is a very fluid situation right now, and everything is subject to change over time. So what we talk about today may not necessarily be the case 2 weeks from now. And we're just going to try to keep up with the information, but what we're doing today is just presenting what's available right now, what the understanding about schools is right now, and just keep in mind that you'll need to keep up with this information over time. So thanks for being here. Thanks to you, those of you that provided the suggested contribution for the event. It's really helpful for us to keep this programming running. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Hartwell and Mr. Pirozollo.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Thanks for having us. And what a year to have our very first State of the Schools address. So I'd like to start just by kind of giving a synopsis of what education looks like in New York State from a structural point of view, and then we'll get into the things that you really want to start talking about, like reopening and the conversations that we're having around that. So a couple things. When you look at New York State from a basically how is it put together educationally, we have New York City, which has its own Department of Education, and then we have the rest of the state. And the rest of the state is comprised of over 730 public school districts, 9 of which are right here in the Cayuga-Onondaga BOCES. And here's how we get there from 730 plus school districts. There are 37 regions in New York State that are called sole supervisory districts. And every sole supervisory district has a board of cooperative educational services, AKA BOCES, and every BOCES has a district superintendent. So the 37 BOCES are split up into joint management teams. There are 9 of those across New York State. Our joint management team is made up of our neighbors to the south, TST BOCES. We also have OCM BOCES, which is our largest BOCES that houses our Regional Information Center, also known as the RIC. And then we have to the north, City BOCES in Oswego County. And those 4 BOCES those 3 BOCES along with Cayuga-Onondaga BOCES make up our joint management team. So our BOCES is comprised of 9 school districts. Our 2 Onondaga County school districts are Jordan Elbridge Central Schools and Skinny Atlas Central Schools. And then we have all of Cayuga County's school districts are made up of Auburn, Cato Meridian, Moravia, Port Byron, Southern Cayuga, Weedsport, and Union Springs. So I'm the district superintendent and CEO here of the BOCES, and I am honored and privileged to work with 9 of the best superintendents in New York State. We have been blessed to learn and grow through this together, and I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. So to my left is one of those. Jeff Pirozollo is the superintendent of the largest district in our BOCES, Auburn Enlarged City Schools, and I'll turn it over to Jeff to introduce himself.
Well, thank you, Dr. Hartwell. Jeff Pirozollo from Auburn. Thank you to Tracy for having both of us here to have some discussion today. Like Mr. Hartwell said, we're very lucky with our BOCES. We're very lucky to have Mr. Hartwell leading our charge as well, because we went for quite a few years without a district superintendent here. So, it's great to have somebody here at the helm that can help lead us as superintendents. And boy, we've been meeting a lot during the last few months. We meet once a week. We usually only meet once a month, maybe twice a month, but we've been meeting weekly just to compare notes and share ideas. And, this goes back again to mid-March when we started meeting. But one great thing about our group is that we all take and share ideas, and we steal ideas from one another. And I think that is what makes us a great working team, is that we all have our own ideas, and we take those ideas and see if we can adapt them to our district, which is what we're going to get a little bit into today. Yep. Dr. Hartwell and I are going to talk a little bit about some of the guidelines that were shared with us, and what our reopening plans could look like, and what we're going to be sharing out. As most of you know, we have a deadline this Friday. All of the reopening plans for every school district must be housed on our website for the state to review. So we are all working to get that document done. We're meeting regularly to compare notes. And, one thing working in a unique BOCES that we're in is, again, like Mr. Hartwell said, Auburn is the biggest school district. So our plan is going to look a lot different than the other plans with our countywide schools, just because of sheer numbers. We have some school districts like Southern Cayuga who expands a huge region. So, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the areas that we're looking at when we're building our plans. And we're also going to talk a little bit later, about some of what we've learned through the closure. Because, again, sometimes we all focus on the negatives of closure. Sometimes we got to look at what some of the positives have been. And, online learning and distance learning has taught us some things that will be incorporated now, I think, for the rest of our times in our careers and moving forward. So with that, I thought maybe Mr. Hartwell could talk a little bit about the state level and what's been going on at the state, because he's in those meetings regularly.
Yeah, so, like I said, there are 37 of me across the state, and, we meet also very frequently. My state role, challenges us to look at, just differences and, from one part of the state to the other. There are parts of our state, obviously, particularly or specifically around reopening, that have higher infection rates, lower infection rates, and how are those, what type of control do we have locally, to make certain decisions. And, as we've been meeting since March, at the state level as well, we've been paying very, very close attention to the public health department at the state level and the local level. It is a public health crisis, so it takes a community to overcome some of the challenges. And then, the state education department is also doing its best to try to communicate with us, and also work with the Board of Regents to really say, hey, here's where we need to be flexible. Here's where, so the Board of Regents was tremendous, the work they did in the latter part of the school year by, relaxing some of the requirements around 180 days. And, some of the reporting that generally is done, from the governor's office to relax and really, basically say APPR for 1 year. That's something you don't have to worry about because of the online situation that we found ourselves in. Those are some of the things I think that really were helpful to the field, where it was one less thing that they had on their plate as we tried to negotiate this process. So here we are, still going in this public health crisis. One of the things I think that now we turn to and say, okay, well, look at from March until June, we were actually more like emergency response in the classroom, right? So many folks would say, well, boy, the online version of education didn't really go as we had hoped, from students, parents, teachers. And one of the things, Mr. Pirozollo talked a minute ago to talk about, look at the positives. That was an area where we found, hey, we can really get better around online learning and distance learning. At the same time, I do want to take a moment to applaud, the faculty, staff, students, and parents for their response to, a real crisis situation. On March 13th, we were in school, and it was looking a lot like school looks like, and like a lot of us think it should look like. And then on Saturday, March 14th, the 10 of us met with, Kathleen and Aileen were kind enough to show up and talk to us about what next week would look like. The week of March 16th, and that, if you remember, is the week that not only we closed here in Cayuga County and Cayuga-Onondaga BOCES, but also across the state. That's the week schools shut down. So literally with a light switch, our students and faculty and staff went from what they really, really knew how to do well to, wow, we're kind of swimming without our swimmies here, and we have to make the best of it. And make the best of it they did. No one would say, hey, we knocked it out of the park from a perspective of what we really, we acted like we had all these years of experience doing this, but at the same time, they took care of our kids, they answered the bell, and we really, really appreciate that. So now we've had some time to really look at, okay, what are some professional development opportunities? What can we do to make sure, if we have to go back out like this again, that our teaching and learning can be more synchronous, and we can equip not only our faculty and staff with the tools and skills that they need to do a better job at that, but also things like structured schedules and those types of things for our students. As we look to reopen, I think everybody starts with the idea of, what can we do to get all of our kids back in school? I think that's the starting point. And then they look at their, the resources, and not only human resource, but the physical resources, the facilities, and say, okay, how does that impact us? And as Mr. Pirozollo alluded to a moment ago, every single school district in New York State, not only our 9, but everyone, has to look at their particular set of circumstances and say, okay, what's the best we can do given the set of circumstances and guidelines? And that's why you're going to see so many different types of plans come out on Friday for those, and some have already come out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Dr. Hartwell hit the nail on the head when he said, our teachers were amazing, because we went from in school to out of school, and what our teachers pulled off and performed. But I also got to give a huge shout out to parents, because parents became instant teachers. And, that's one thing that we don't want to have happen in the future. We want our children back in schools, but we also want to make sure that it's safe to be able to do that. So, we want schools to be safe for our kids and our staff to come back. But we do want them back in. But again, that goes back now to some of the guidelines that were sent out by the state, and how each school district has to look at their own resources and figure out, how can we open up school under those guidelines? And I'll talk about Auburn right now, because, I've had some staff reopening meetings. I've met with administrators, our cabinet. We had community with parents reopening. And one thing that I've shared is sometimes fair isn't always equal. Because some school districts don't have as many students, and they have bigger spaces because of enrollment numbers going down. They can split classes up. They can separate kids out. They don't have as many kids to transport. So some schools may be able to bring back students every single day during the week and be able to socially distance them, while other school districts, mostly your larger school districts, your small city school districts, your Liverpools, Baldwinsvilles, Syracuse, your Big Five, we just have too many numbers to be able to do that. So one of the things that we looked at Dr. Hartwell, when we're looking at Auburn, is the very first thing is transportation, right?
Yeah.
So can we transport our 58% of our students every day, which is about 2,500 students? Well, if we have 66 passenger buses, we can only get 22 kids at maximum on that.
Yep.
More like 11. There's no way we can transport all of those children. So, right there tells us, hey, we've got to do something a little bit different. So that's why when the state said you had to come up with 3 plans, which is what every superintendent is working on, an in-person, a hybrid, and a remote or a distance learning plan, you've got to look at your resource and what you can do to pull them off. And so for some school districts, they will be able to pull off more than others. But a school district like the size of Auburn, we just don't have the physical space in our buildings to bring every kid back every single day. So we've got to find that appropriate fit. And you're going to see things different all over the state. You're going to see some school districts that may shut down their high school and middle schools and have elementary kids in all of those buildings. You might see some kids with A-B schedules. You might see some that are just going to be complete remote learning until we can get back. My thing is this, is I want equity for all kids. So whatever we can bring our kids back, I want them to get that equal amount of time back. Our children need to be back into school. We want to get them back into school as much as we possibly can. But there are many, many factors. Mr. Hartwell and I were talking about some of the different headlines of what we had to look at. One of the things that we spent a lot of time with was food and nutrition. Feeding our children, making sure that our kids were fed throughout that entire time. We're still continuing to feed them all summer long. And again, if we're not in school every day, how are we going to feed children every day? And we've got plans to do that as well. And one thing that we've been doing is each superintendent has been sharing our reopening plans with Dr. Hartwell and with each other so that we sort of have an idea, because again, we want to try to stay as consistent as we can, knowing that we are going to be a little bit different because of the size and the resources that some of the other districts have.
Yeah, we're likely going to have, even in our 9 district BOCES, we're likely going to have upwards of 4 or 5 different plans. So, I know there are a lot of employers on the line potentially, and one of the things, I think that from an employer standpoint, knowing that, parents may not live actually where the physical job is located, I guess that there's one of the asks is, if there's ever a time to be flexible and understanding, now is the time. It's, children in one district may be going to school every other day. Some may be going to school every day, and maybe a younger student, an elementary age student in one district, and their older sibling at the secondary level may be remote every day. So there's all sorts of combinations that are potentially going to play out. From the employees' standpoint that are going into your organizations to work, there might be days where they say, I know I'm supposed to start at 9, but I physically can't be here until 9:30, and that might be a challenge in the short run until we can get back to some sense of a new normal here. One of the things I can tell you is that, just to reiterate, we certainly we spend an awful lot of time with each other. We spend an awful lot of time talking about this and trying to be as similar as we can, knowing that there are nuances in every single district that causes us sometimes to be dissimilar. And that's kind of more of the fact of the matter. But we certainly appreciate the support and the patience that people exercise in a time when it's easy to become impatient, and we certainly understand that. But our goal is really to get every student into school as soon as we can, and as we continue to put the finishing touches on our plans, respectively, through this week, and make them live on our websites. I guess no later than close of business on Friday. then we're going to wait again until the end of the first week in August to see what the data tells the governor with regard to do we get the thumbs up or not to move forward. And Governor Cuomo has been very communicative around what that might look like even after the 7th of August comes and goes. If there is a thumbs up to continue, they're still going to keep their eyes on the numbers, and that could potentially change. So we have to be nimble as well, and we understand that. That's why we talk so much outside of the fact we like each other. We are in consistent and constant communication with one another around what's coming out of the New York State Department of Health, the governor's office, state education, and then our local entities as well.
And that's one piece that Tracy brought up was the word fluid, right? So we're coming up with all of these plans. These plans are going to be constantly changing. We're going to be monitoring. We're going to be adjusting them. The document that we're going to have online on our website will be able to be changed instantaneous as we get more information. When Governor Cuomo comes out and gives us some direction, the first week of August, we'll take it with a grain of salt because we know in a matter of a couple of weeks, a lot of things can change. So, until we get to close to September is when I think we'll find out the real answer, whether our children will actually be able to go back to school or not. And again, one of the issues with the AB schedules that we face, and again, I understand at the elementary school especially, is, parents work. And it's very difficult if kids aren't in school, how parents can go and work. And we're really aware of those situations. Like I said, we want to get back to normalcy as quickly as we possibly can. But we want to make sure we do it in a safe way to make sure our children and staff are safe. So we're going to be continuing to look at all of these pieces. This evening I'm going to be presenting to the board. We're going to be presenting our 3 plans this evening. And having some discussion. And again, even with our plan right now, it's a district-wide plan. The details as far as instruction, because again, the instruction is a key component of this. That's something that we're going to be working out the entire month of August. We're doing a lot of professional development with our teachers, especially on distance learning. We want to make sure that we're ready for platforms, whether it's Google platform, with Zoom lessons. We want to make sure that we have all those pieces and we're ready to go. Like I said, our teachers did an amazing job, but now we've got the time to prepare those lessons and really hone in on our skill level. But some of the things too, again, what this has really opened our eyes up is teletherapy. Being able to do more services online with children to keep them in classrooms more so that they can be there for more direct instruction. Some of the secondary advantages for our children to receive college credit and dual courses, dual high school credit and college credit, which we've been doing quite a bit of right now. Yeah. But this might even open us up even more and for other districts as well.
Yeah, one of the the partnerships and relationships, friendships that we have that we're awful proud of and continues to grow is our partnership with President Brian Durant and the friends and colleagues at Cayuga Community College that do offer our students the ability to not only go to school at CCC while they're still in high school. They can take those courses in their home district, or now new this year they can actually go to the college, and those types of things, certainly don't happen by accident, and it's kind of a doff of the hat to President Durant and his staff at CCC and their willingness and wanting to continue to build a relationship that's just fantastic to be a part of. So we're consistently trying to create opportunities for our children. And one of the things I think that, there's some potential, if there's a silver lining at all with these types of things, is that, that kind of forces us to think about, well, our kids aren't getting this opportunity. How can, what are our other options? What can we create? What can we develop? And a lot of it is partnerships with business and industry and community college and and a 4-year college or two, and just to continue to create opportunities for our students to grow, and all of us really, and really to become more of a cohesive community at large in our region. And we're awful proud of that part of our work. It's fun, and we love the people that we work with.
Hey guys.
Some of the questions.
As we learned before we started, this camera is a little tilted up. If you guys don't mind standing, it would help everybody a lot.
Oh,
thanks.
Okay.
Is your comment box just?
I'm getting a lot of text messages. Continue.
I guess one thing that I would share is that some of the questions that we've been receiving a lot during our open forums, our reopening meetings, whether it was with staff members or whether it was with the community and parents, is some of the safety precautions that we're taking. So, as you know, children are going to have to wear masks, especially in common areas. So to school, leaving school, in hallways, bathrooms, those type of areas, they will have to wear masks. The one question I get a lot is parents will come to me and say, my kids aren't going to come to school if they have to wear masks all day long. Well, they don't have to wear masks all day long. As long as we're socially distancing our seats so that they're 6 feet away, they can actually take their masks off during instruction time. So students will be wearing masks to school when they leave school, if they're in the hallway, common areas. But once they're at their desk and they're learning during instructional time, they can remove those, as well as they can during lunchtime, of course. Can't have a mask on when you're eating, right?
So it's very similar to the restaurants that we go to now.
Correct.
You walk in with the mask, they seat you, and at your seat you can take the mask up. But if you have to go to the bathroom, mask back on, go to the bathroom, back to your seat, take the mask off.
Correct. So that's one question that we get a lot. The other questions we get are regarding screenings, right? We are going to have to take temperature checks every day. And for a lot of school districts, it's going to look different. Some school districts are going to do the temperature check before children get on buses. Unfortunately, for like Auburn, we can't do that. We subcontract our transportation, so we have a company do it. So we're actually going to have to do all of our temperature checks right at school. And questionnaires and surveys. So, there is going to be procedures that really are going to have to be followed for when children and staff come to work every day. So, those are some questions, but transportation has been a lot of the big questions. Children do have to wear their masks on the buses at all times. Even if they're socially distanced, they still have to keep their masks on, which is a little bit different than in the schools. As far as disinfecting, I know many of our school districts, parents are worried about, are we going to be cleaning? Are we going to be disinfecting? We will be doing that we'll be doing it all day long and at night. We're going to set up places for kids to have hand sanitizers. We're going to have those set up all around the schools. A lot of the elementary schools are actually going to keep all the kids in a cohort. They'll stay separately in the classroom. They will never leave those classrooms. Everything will be moved into them. That's going to be how some schools set up. Some can't do that at the secondary level, but we're going to try to keep everybody as separated as we can.
Yeah, and it's much like the high praise that we have for our faculty and staff that deliver the instruction. I know that when Jeff and I talk about, the folks at Auburn and Al Albring and his crew here at the BOCES, and I know if our other 7 colleagues were standing around the table, they'd all echo just the really sometimes the unsung work that the folks that keep us clean and safe. Oh, yeah. Our maintenance and cleaning staffs are fantastic. And in a time when it's human nature to say, boy, I don't really want to, is it dangerous? It's safe for me. You see them masked up and they have the machines and they're making sure that we have a place to work each and every day, and our children have a place to come that's deep cleaned and safe. And I know that, some people are saying, oh, Wednesdays we're going to do a deep cleaning. Well, the truth of the matter is that every day is a deep cleaning, right?
That's right.
They take that very, very seriously. And again, just hats off to them. And I know you feel the same way. It's just we have just fantastic people doing that work. And it's really, when they say it takes a village and everyone needs to pull on the rope, as much as our teachers have done just a great job, and the staff as a whole too. We just have to echo the work that they've done.
And Tracy, I know you've got some questions, and I guess we'll allow for that. But, just to sum it up, state of the state for schools right now, we're fluid and changing. And we don't have any answers to any of our questions. All we can do is prepare the best we can. We want the best for our children and for our parents and for our staff. We want to create the safest place for children to come to school and our staff to come to school. But, just at this time, again, I think we could see different models. If people are in hybrid models, I can see us starting school in September. We might have to come out in October because the second wave comes through. We may be able to get back in November. Yeah, and then flu season's going to hit. So even if we have an idea of where we're going to start in September, that's going to be ever changing as well. And, Auburn has now become a one-to-one initiative school district, which means every child will have a Chromebook. We've been working for 5 years to do this. That means every night our children have to take their Chromebook home because we just don't know what's going to happen, like what happened on March 13th. So, our schools are up in the air, but we can still prepare for a lot of plans to make sure that we can still give quality education and quality services to our students and to their parents.
And just one more piece of perspective that we've talked about, and we still don't, we're trying to problem solve around it, but just in any given year, 2015, 16, 17, 18, our elementary school nurses see probably somewhere between 400 and 600 students in a month that come down to, for, the sniffles to the tummy ache or those types of things. And when you look at the list that they provide, or they all could potentially be a symptom of COVID-19. And so how, if we do wind up back in school, how we can navigate and help our nursing staffs navigate that, and parents to communicate with and just make sure everyone has a complete understanding. It's a challenge, and we're still working on it. Luckily, we do have some time, but that in and of itself, I know, is going to be, a little bit of a heavy lift for everybody. Tracy, do you have any questions?
Yes. So if anybody does have any questions out there, we put my email address into the comment box. Feel free to email me. One thing I just wanted to, I've got a couple questions, but one thing I wanted to chat about quickly is, the difference between schools and childcare. Our childcare infrastructure was somewhat insufficient before all of this happened, and anyone that had children in school, they didn't necessarily need daytime childcare. So now, even more so, our childcare system is not meeting the needs of the community just because of the sheer size of the problem. Not the children being the problem being COVID. But could you just discuss about that kind of balance between, getting kids back in school so that they have some place to go during the days, but balancing that with actual education?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And Tracy, that's something that we struggle with. Our focus has been our younger children and how we could get them into school every single day because of childcare. There's multiple issues. When you're dealing with a health issue that is causing us to, have to socially distance, it's hard to bring everybody together. The thing that I've been doing, and I'm sure other superintendents are doing as well, is meeting with outside organizations to see if we can set up certain daycare spaces for children that maybe can't go to school. The other thing that we look at doing is maybe if you're in an A-B schedule, you try to make sure that the kids that are going to school on a certain day, all their siblings go the same day. So if they have an older sibling in high school or the junior high, they're at school together, but they're also home together on those days that they're not in school. We've got to continue to work with, like BTW, the college, the Gabber Center, the YMCA, and talking about daycare facilities, what we can do. But, that's one of the biggest problems when we're talking about an A day, B day versus kids coming every day, especially at the elementary level.
Yeah, so we operate a daycare center here, and for the latter part of the school year, from March to June, it was closed. We reopened on July 6th, and we have a reduced number of students, so we can adhere to those guidelines that Mr. Pirozollo was talking about. And so far, so good. We're meeting the needs of the students and families down there. But one of the other pieces that is a challenge is we're talking about a very highly regulated process, right? So daycare, not anyone can just open up a daycare, and it's so I know some like, oh, why don't you just that would be great, but you got to remember it's very highly regulated, and we ask for some flexibility. We have certainly received some flexibility, but it's a challenge that we will continue to work on. If people have ideas or would like to chat, we certainly are open to that. But we certainly understand the question and the challenge regarding childcare and getting kids back in school. I know solves part of that issue.
And we do have a question about the role of testing and testing turnaround in terms of how that will impact what happens with schools. So it sounds like recently the turnaround for test results is around the 14-day mark. And, how can we properly catch an outbreak before it spirals into children, staff, parents, grandparents, when they aren't necessarily getting those results back quickly?
Yeah, so it is that's part of the challenge. So it's really everybody, like you mentioned. So students and anyone that they come into contact with at home, and then also at school. If a faculty or staff member comes down with symptoms, what happens then? So part of every reopening plan will have protocols in it that districts have to come up with, that BOCES have to come up with, that say, okay, what happens? What's your particular protocol when a student, faculty member, staff member, whomever says they have symptoms or test positive for coronavirus?
And Kathleen Cuddy actually joined us at our last superintendent's meeting so we could have discussion over that. Because that is going to be a big issue. We talk about the temperatures. If a child has a temperature of 100.0, they're not allowed to come to school. And again, we've got to find a place to put the child until appropriate procedures are in place where the child is picked up. But a child could walk into school with 100.0 temperature because they have a toothache. I mean, right. That's really not a high temperature, especially for a younger child. So, these are protocols that we have to have in place, but we really are going to need the guidance from the health department to really help us with those pieces of tracing and testing and all of those, because you're right, Tracy. Right now we're finding out it's taking 10 to 14 days to get those tests back. So if a child goes out with a symptom, by the time they get tested, come back, their 14 days are going to be over. So, that is an issue that we're speaking about, but we're going to need help and guidance from the health department throughout that process.
And can you talk a little bit more about the transportation piece of this and how, I think you touched on this a tiny bit, but talk about busing and how you're anticipating getting kids to school should schools open?
Yeah, and that's the biggest issue right now, Tracy. For Auburn, it's sheer numbers. For like somebody like Southern Cayuga, it's sheer distance. They have I forgot how many square miles.
168.
168 square miles that they have to pick children up. And when you can only go out there and put 11 kids on a bus and you've got 66 kids, 50 miles out, it just makes it impossible for you to be able to make those runs all day long to get kids to school. For Auburn, the issue is we have on some buses, we have 84 children scheduled to sit on a bus. Well, when you can only get 11 to 22 of those children on that bus, you would be transporting kids all day long, every day. And again, we have multiple bus runs. We have our high school, we have our middle school, and then we have all 5 elementary schools. So when you can only fill, the regulation reads that you have to wear a mask and you have to socially distance. I've got questions into the state regarding seating. If there are high seats on a bus, can that act as a barrier? I'm hearing different answers to that, but even say that could be a barrier, the most I could fit on a bus would be 22 kids, unless I had a couple family members that I could sit in the same seat. So transportation becomes the very first barrier for us to be able to bring all kids back to school every day, just because of the limited number that we can get on a bus.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions come in by email. The first is, in this conversation, we talk a lot about K through 12, and the question is if there are specific plans now or in the future for pre-K.
So we've been meeting with all the pre-K principals, directors throughout Auburn. We met a week and a half ago because what we really are talking about, right, is consistency. So they have some different guidelines to follow than what we do. So there's different guidelines when it comes to pre-K and K through 12. Many of the pre-K classrooms are right inside our own buildings. So again, within our buildings, they're going to have to sort of follow the guidelines that we have set place. But, if they have got classrooms at the Y or at the Montessori, some of these other organizations where they have some of the classrooms, they are following their own guidelines, but we're working in partner with them to make sure that we can stay as consistent as possible. But I do believe the funding should be out there for pre-K. One thing that I've heard a lot of talk about was some of the pre-K programs completely UPK shut down. They won't do that this year. At least they will go virtual as well if the school districts have to. So there are different regulations, but we're going to try to keep them in Auburn as consistent as they possibly can.
Okay, the next question is about online learning and what are the options available for parents that elect to keep their kids at home? Due to the fact that teachers will likely be in class educating, will there be a separate plan for these students? Would a collaboration with surrounding BOCES programs that can provide a thorough online curriculum be considered?
Great question. And actually a bunch of us superintendents got together last Friday in Union Springs and had this discussion with Jessica Doctor, the deputy superintendent here for BOCES, regarding that exact conversation about BOCES programming for kids with curriculum. The issue that faces many of us is, the numbers on how many students are not willing to come back. We did a survey at the end of the school year. It was about 7% of our population was uncomfortable. And again, that was back in June of sending kids back to school. We are going to do another survey on that. The issue that it happens is when we have teachers teaching every day, they can't do both. They can't be online and they can't be doing classroom learning. Yeah, could we set up some type of speaker or camera system? It would be difficult. We're looking at different ways. We're looking at, yes, possibly synchronous learning where we would have cameras set up in classrooms so that the kids that weren't in school those days could follow. Or we're also looking at different options such as, just when the kids aren't in there, they will have an online lesson to do themselves and some of the work that might carry over from the day before. So we are having that conversation. We're going to continue to have that plan. I called Brian this morning. We were on the phone at 7:30 having this actual conversation about this today about, City BOCES is looking at a program for students up north, and maybe we could look at something different. But again, cost comes into it. There's a lot of factors that play into that.
Yeah, so the honest answer today, Tracy, is that there's probably not one answer that is going to be satisfactory over all of our districts. So specifically, Jeff can speak to Auburn, but there are 8 other districts that are writing this particular piece into their plan as well. So I think the best advice as we start to learn whether or not what the fall holds for us, if we even have the all clear to go back to school. If that's the case and someone's interested in online learning, I would start with the building principal. Is that what you would prefer in your district?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to start, because again, we understand that there's children that have compromised immune systems. We have parents have compromised immune system. We have staff members with compromised immune systems. So there's going to be multiple reasons why some students may not be able to come back to school. So if they contact their building principal, we start generating these lists, we can get a better feel of this. But setting up the program, Tracy, again, like Brian said, we've got 9 different plans out there, but a lot of the plans we're picking apart and taking the good pieces that we like from each individual one to help us build a program for all of our kids. So that conversation will continue the whole month of August.
Yep.
Great. And for viewers, it seems like the comment didn't go through, so I just popped my email address in a very low-tech fashion at the top of the screen for you. No, Brian, you can't see it. So we got those questions about. I don't have any other questions. Are there? So I guess. From my perspective, in terms of helping to prepare employers, you said that the plans will all be online on the different districts' websites. Is that correct? Starting Friday?
So on Friday, every school district by the end of the business day has to have their plan up on the website. And again, for business owners and people that own businesses and all of our people that work in there, one of the things that we're focusing on, especially in Auburn, I know we all are, all of our school district, is again, looking at the younger children, trying to get them into school every day, all day long for the employers and the employees themselves. Unfortunately, just with the guidelines and room capability and just these guidelines of social distancing, for some school districts, it's going to be impossible to do. But yes, our plan will be out there. So all employees, employers, they will all know what our district plan is. Now, starting after next week, we start our building plans. Our building plans will be adopted to what our district plans are, but every building will have little different tweaks in them, but the schedule will be the same for all kids.
Yeah, and so one of the things is a tip for looking at the plans. I think some people that I run into, they only want a very specific part of the plan. They want to see what the schedule is going to be for their son or daughter's school. So the plans likely will be upwards of 200 pages long, and they'll deal with everything from health and safety, facilities, student teachers, child nutrition. There's 17 categories that we have to adhere to. And then every superintendent, if my counting what was accurate, I believe there are 89 attestations that every superintendent in the state is going to have to guarantee prior to submitting their plan, including the 2 of us. That'll be something that we have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that legal, we're adhering to what we need to from that particular perspective as well. But when you open the plan or you open that page, there is a specific heading for, or could be a specific heading for school schedules. And if that's what you're looking for, that's you can scroll right to that. It's probably going to be somewhere in the middle of the plan. But the plan will have protocols for all of the things and more that we talked about today.
So employers just keep an eye on those schedules should things go back to being in school, and if your employees might have different drop-off times, make sure to keep an eye on that. And if you're able to be flexible with your scheduling, that might be a good way to help employees balance these different needs. We did have one follow-up question on transportation come through. Would it help if families who normally would have children bused are able to transport and sign off to do so, thereby reducing numbers?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. And some of the issues, Tracy, that we face is again, Genesee Elementary is a walking school, right? So I don't have the issues. Mine is just capacity in that building. But sometimes even we understand sometimes cars break down and now they can't get the kids to work. Our poverty number is pretty high here in Auburn, and if a car breaks down, it may be months before. So even though we get that information, sometimes things change, like our plan is going to change. We want to make sure, though, that we have a set plan that we can execute for every child in our district. But that would be a huge help if we can get parents to help us transport, because as you heard what I said, 66 passenger bus, even if I can only get 11 to 22, that's not 50% of the kids. That's like a quarter of the kids at 22, or a third of the kids. So we're going to need assistance from parents as well to help us with those things.
And another question just came in. How about kids with special needs and the plans for instruction in high school and elementary for those kids? Many struggle with computers and attention. What about that issue? Many people in our community who work have children with special needs. How will this work?
So, students with special needs and special education is a heading unto itself in everyone's plan. And one of the things that we know is that all students, but particularly students with special needs, they do better when they're in person. We know that. There's all sorts of research that supports and substantiates that. Our directors of special education, respectively and collectively, have these conversations across our region and then internally at our districts and BOCES about what's the most that we can do. And I think that depending on the program and depending on the district, again, as they look at their own particular, space and resources and those types of things, I think the planning around special education is something that we are continuing to decide what it's going to look like. And I know that's probably going to vary from district to district. But we are all of the same under the same agreement that students with disabilities need to be in school and in front of a teacher.
We absolutely agree with that. And again, we're talking about some of our most fragile children too. And when you're talking 12-1 or 8-1, 6-1, whatever program, some of the programs that our children may be in may be able to be housed every day in their own classroom. Again, if we're keeping cohorts together. Sometimes with our 15-1 are the kids that are just integrated into every classroom. That's going to be more of a challenge for a school district like the size of Auburn. So we are looking at that. We're talking about that every day. Like Dr. Hartwell just said, that is a heading in its own. So we're going to continue to look at that piece of it to find out how we can make sure that we're getting the instruction of those children every day.
Great.
Tracy, question back. Was that question with regard to BOCES by any chance in a BOCES program?
It doesn't specify. It seemed more general. They did not mention BOCES, but I can follow up with them and try to clarify that to continue the conversation. But if you have something to add for BOCES, by all means.
So, so at BOCES, we obviously, we operate a number of special education programs on our campus here at the REC. So we operate day treatment program, 611, 612. This year, our 612 autism program is moved to Jordan Elbridge. So we certainly we continue to not be able to thank them enough for housing that program, because it opens up space here for another social emotional learning classroom. So now we have a continuum through the not only the primary grades, but also the intermediate grades for social emotional learning. And then also we have 8-1 and 12-1, but typically the 8-1s and 12-1s are housed in districts. So all of our campus-based programs are going to be able to run in person, much like they have, adhering to the guidelines that we have, assuming again that we are, get the all clear to come back to school. And then our district-based programs, 8-1 and 12-1 that are out in districts. So we certainly, we have, like I mentioned, the program at Jordan Elbridge. We have 5 classrooms at Fort Byron. We have another 6 at Fort Byron, 5 at Union Springs, 5 more at Skinny Atlas. Those programs will follow the host district's schedule for that building. So if, Auburn houses a number of our programs, and if there's an A-B schedule, for instance, in Auburn, they would follow that schedule there. If there's a half-day schedule in another district, they would follow that particular schedule. So that's kind of where we are at right now. And again, I'll defer back to your original comment that's certainly fluid, but we're prepared at this point, given the guidance in hand and the information at hand. We've reviewed our resources, had internal conversations. We believe that we'll be able to pull that piece off.
Great, thank you. And we just had one last comment come in. It's not a question. Miss Jennifer Gorney just wanted to thank everyone for their hard work and dedication through this process. So with that, we'll start to wrap up here. I'm going to come back. Hi, everybody. So
thank you, Mrs. Gorney, by the way.
Yes. And if anybody else has additional questions, please feel free to keep sending them my way. I can respond to you individually and seek out answers. But again, everything's fluid. So answers today may be history tomorrow. So we'll keep trying to keep you in the loop as things progress. And thank you, Jeff and Brian, for doing this with us today. I really appreciate you taking the time with everything you both have going on, and we look forward to seeing the plans coming out this week. So good luck. And for those of you watching, if you're interested, we have 2 more events in this series. We have the State of Tourism coming up on Thursday, and the State of the County next week on August 6th. So those are both on our website as well, cayugacountychamber.com. You just need to register individually for each one. Again, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, great.